Hey everybody, Wes here, and today I'm going to talk about The Adventures of Bayou Billy, which is a game released by Konami back in 1989. Now, this game gets a ton of hate, and it's understandable because the game is hard as shit. I mean, when I was a kid, I was lucky if I could get to stage 5, which is the second driving level. It wasn't until I was a teenager years later that I was finally able to beat the stupid game. But it's actually one of my favorite games. I really like it, one of my favorite NES games. Now, what people may not know is that the Japanese version, which was released on the Famicom, is called Mad City, and it's much more playable than the American version. There's tons of differences, and that's what I wanted to do today, is take a look at the differences between these two games and find out which is the better of the two. So, let's take a look. Konami released Mad City for the Nintendo Famicom back in 1988, and centered the plot around a Louisiana-based character from the Bayou, Billy West. There's no denying that Konami got inspiration from the 1986 flick, Crocodile Dundee. From the vest to the hat, the resemblance is uncanny. And what's that in Billy's hand?
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
Of course, Paul Hogan's lovable character hails from the Australian outback, where he would encounter crocodiles, not alligators, which is what Billy would find in his neck of the wood, Bayou. In fact, Billy probably has a lot more in common with Leatherhead from the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon than anyone else.
I guarantee.
Including his own embarrassing stint on the Captain N TV show.
Y'all are lost. The warp zone out of the bayou is right past them trees.
You could even say that Billy's a late 80s hybrid of Leatherhead and Crocodile Dundee. A lean, mean alligator wrestling machine. Now, before we take a look at the many differences between Japan's Mad City and America's Bayou Billy, let's first take a look at their respective commercials.
Gun shooting. Car action.
The ad for Mad City boasts of 3 different styles of action: driving, shooting, and fighting, using 2 laughable gaijin that dance around in the jungle. Not a Bayou. The American ad, while almost as bad, hits a little closer to home using a stereotypical Cajun buffoon wrestling a gator as Konami's USA spokesperson to move units.
Driving, shooting, and of course that is one swamp stomping adventure.
The Adventures of Bayou Billy for Nintendo.
It all starts when I get out this here swamp. You really get me riled now.
So let's go ahead and take a look at the games. Now, as you can see, the title screen between the two are vastly different. Pressing start on both games yields the same result, until...
The Adventures of Bayou Billy.
Yes, we've all laughed at this voice sample along with numerous others from Konami.
Blades of Steel.
But still, I gotta admit, at the time it was pretty cool. Surprisingly, Oh God was not censored from the American version, but take a look at this. There's additional color and less shadows on Billy's face versus the Japanese version. Looks like we got a little bit of a graphical enhancement over here in the States. And a hyphen was added between Oh and God in our version. Once the cutscene ends, Mad City throws up a simple display of Stage 1, where Bayou Billy reminds you that you'll be using the controller for this stage. Once level 1 begins, the first difference you'll probably notice is that the first enemy we encounter on Bayou Billy is dressed in blue, while Mad City has him decked out in green. Also, maybe a subtle difference to some, but glaring to me, was that the sand in Mad City is speckled with grain, while the ground is a more even yellow in the American version. There also seems to be rocks amongst the trees in the background of Bayou Billy, while completely absent from Mad City. Mad City has grass ingrained within the sand, while Bayou Billy does not. And once all enemies on screen have been defeated, the screen automatically scrolls to the right on Bayou Billy, indicating to continue on, while Mad City requires you to walk to the right edge of the screen in order to scroll the screen further. And the first gator pit you come across is completely different in both games. The rest of the level differs from each other in regards to the landscape, such as Japanese frogmen kiddie pools replaced with American gator pits. But the biggest difference in the game is not an aesthetic one. One of the reasons people hate the Adventures of Bayou Billy so much is because of the relentlessly brutal difficulty the game has to offer. And deservedly so, the game is simply unfair at times, and if you've had the patience to conquer this game, then kudos to you. Throwing your controller and rushing to your local game shop to trade this one in was Japan's gift to us. Like giving us less ammo in the American version of Resident Evil years later, Konami upped the difficulty tenfold for Mad City. In Mad City, the enemies are less aggressive, take less damage to defeat, and dish out fractions of the pain dealt compared to its American counterpart. After years of playing the excruciating pain in the ass that is Bayou Billy, Mad City will seem like a walk in the park on steroids. Once defeating the first stage in both games, you're met with a cutscene in which Godfather Gordon has your beloved Annabelle strung up by her wrists. What's this?
Whoa, look at those Magumbos!
This is the American version? Japan's Annabelle has a full dress on, with a lock of hair discreetly covering her cleavage. While it's more archetypical for the Japanese version of a game to show more skin, the American version got this one right, employing a stereotypical southern skank wearing Daisy Dukes and a torn rag for a halter top. I guarantee. And Gordon's twisted maniacal laugh is a welcome addition to America's Bayou Billy, where in Mad City, Gordon bids us adieu with indifferent silence. Round 2 is the first rail shooter stage, and is pretty much the same in both versions, with the main difference being that you start out with more ammo in the Japanese game. Stage 3 is completely different from each other. Mad City offers a short and sweet all-sand level, which takes just over a minute to defeat. Not the case with Bayou Billy. The landscape of Stage 3 is completely different, with hordes of enemies attacking you from all angles with clubs and knives.
That's a knife.
And you find yourself waist deep in the swamp, battling hungry gators. Why, Japan? Why? The same boss awaits at the end in both games, but naturally Mad City's is much easier. What the hell did we do to deserve this? Oh yeah. So after Stage 3 comes my very least favorite part of Bayou Billy. In fact, you could even say that I downright hate it. That's right, because now it's time to take Billy's rickety-ass Jeep down the dirt road towards Nollins. The difference between the driving stages of Bayou Billy and Mad City are drastically different. First of all, the road in Mad City is slightly wider than Bayou Billy. This makes a huge difference as the sides of the road in Bayou Billy are lined with wooden posts to crash into, sticking out of the ground like crooked teeth, as opposed to Mad City's harmless trees. And hear that annoying squealing sound in the American version? That's the sound of Billy's janky-ass piece of shit Jeep skidding all over the road. Mad City? Nope. The Jeep handles just fine and controls without complaint. Maybe the reason is that Billy drives different Jeeps in each version. Just take a look at the difference. Also, Billy tosses grenades at planes in the American version, while Japanese Billy throws sticks of dynamite. Even the explosions look different. And take a look at the top of the screen. You still have a life meter in Mad City and can sustain several hits to your Jeep before losing a life, while in America, it's one-hit deaths for all. And Bayou Billy added a small legend at the top of the screen, representing your location between the beginning and the end of the road. My guess is that this feature was added because there was no need to hold your breath until the end of the stage in Japan's Mad City. And just when you think the fun's over, it's not. Bayou Billy's highway stage is even worse than the previous dirt road level. It's stupid hard, if only for the mere fact that the controls and handling are just plain god-awful. With nothing but sharp twists and turns, you'll be white-thumbing it the whole way just to stay on the road, all the while creeping along like a cataract-blind grandma just to keep from flying off the road. The Japanese version? Not even close. Mad City's highway isn't nearly as frustrating as Bayou Billy's. The controls are sharp and responsive, contrasting with the American version's need to press the D-pad as hard as possible just to stay alive. The Mad City level flows a lot smoother than Bayou Billy's. Just look at the difference. Why such a drastic change to a level that wasn't broken to begin with? Oh yeah. So by now, we Americans should be completely familiar with what happens when we run out of lives. The continue counter counts down to 0 before we're greeted with a game over screen with awesome music and a nifty graphic of Billy meeting his demise, sinking into some quicksand. Mad City, on the other hand, offers the game over screen first, sans Billy's death graphic, and then the continue counter. We definitely got a little extra in the graphics department. Finally, having reached the city of New Orleans, Billy finds himself on Bourbon Street, and for the most part it's exactly the same on both versions, except for tougher enemies on the US port. Every weapon in the game can be collected in this stage, including knives,
That's a knife.
and the introduction of the whip. Simon Belmont would be proud. The next level is the second shooting stage, and other than your sight being a circle and starting with 100 rounds in Bayou Billy, as opposed to a square sight and 150 rounds in Mad City, the levels are visually identical. The end boss is significantly harder in the American version, and while both versions share the same graphic of Billy being shouted with bullets when you die, the color is slightly different between the two. Again, the American version excels over the Japanese one in regards to cutscene graphics. Stage 8 is located on the front lawn of Gordon's estate, where you come across some of the game's most difficult enemies, including a dog collar. This stage is identical in both versions. Once inside Gordon's estate, you come face to face with the head honcho himself. In Mad City, Gordon's floor is a bright scarlet vermilion, while in Bayou Billy, you duke it out with Goddaddy Gordon on a tranquil purple base, which contrasts with the violence that soon unfolds afterwards. While whipping Gordon to ribbons is the best course of action to take in either version, it's the surprise final battle with Gordon's bodyguards Rocky and Rocco that offers the biggest challenge yet. Hopefully you still have that whip. While the Gruesome Twosome have the same attack pattern in both versions, the hit points for these two in the American version are significantly higher. The first time I beat this game 22 years ago, I felt as if I were a god. Annabelle then rushes out of her cell to greet her savior, clad in a summer dress for Japan's Mad City, while sporting the uniform of the promiscuous for America's Bayou Billy. The difference between Annabelle's attire is the biggest noticeable difference, but the US version added some witty puns, naming the baddies encountered throughout the game as the credits roll by, which have different fonts, by the way. The final difference is a bit puzzling, as the end pops up on the American version, a quick buzz of unintelligible speech quips through. This was not included in Mad City. What the hell does it say? If anyone knows, please share in the comments below.
Alright, so there you have it. Those are the differences between Mad City and the Adventures of Bayou Billy. Now, personally, I like Mad City better. It's a lot more playable, it isn't cheap hard, and it's just a lot more fun. So I would recommend Mad City, but The Adventures of Bayou Billy was such a common game. I mean, they even released a stupid Archie's comic book for it, which I actually own somewhere stored with my comics back in storage, otherwise I would bust it out for you. But The Adventures of Bayou Billy is a cheap game. I wouldn't ever pay more than $5 for it, so I would actually recommend playing both. Now, the Famicom version is perfect to play on the Retron 5 since it does play Famicom games. So I would definitely recommend Mad City over Bayou Billy if you have a Retron 5. But really, I have to recommend the American version as well, because it's the one I grew up with, and it's the one everyone hates, which automatically gives it a special little charm there. So, anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I had a lot of fun making this video. If anyone else has any ideas of other videos or whatever, go ahead and drop them in the comments below. But I'd just like to say thanks a lot for watching, Catch you later.